We're back with another episode of Read More Comics, Moore, where we're investigating the career of Alan Moore's comic book bibliography. First off, we're doing Miracleman, and we're up to issue number 7. Sitting next to me, I have my homeboy Tom Scioli. Directly below is Jim Mahfood, and the base, the rebel base, holding us all up, man. The pillar of the Kayfabe community, Benjamin Mara, is down there holding things up. Fellas, welcome to the channel.
What's up, guys?
And
thank you.
Should we do mea culpas about Chuck Beckham's art, man? Because this issue, he's starting to win me over.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, this is what made me think that Alan Moore raised some kind of hell or gave notes, because it's such an improvement, and it's like all the things that were missing. You know, it's like got like the black backgrounds, and it's I mean, and it's really out there. Like this is like almost like pornographic art, that like how gory and gross it is.
When
definite improvement though, like you guys said. And before we get into interiors, I had some strange thoughts about the Paul Galassi cover.
Okay.
Oh, I'm glad you brought this.
I think all of us are huge Galassi fans.
For sure.
This image misses the mark for me. It's an odd. The main problem is, you know, the facial expression of Mr. Miracle. He's supposed to be this angelic, majestic, all-powerful, almost like God character, and his facial expression, he looks tired and angry and drunk. Yeah. And to me, this is my opinion, but it's kind of an odd cover image for such an epic moment in the comic.
Eclipse is crazy, man. Like, you know, with this recording session to break kayfabe, we're doing issues 7 and 9, and I guess I never paid attention before to the very spare page count. So Eclipse was only willing to pay so much per issue, man, and you know, they sacrificed some page count in order to get this stuff in there. But I bet Galassi didn't get his typical page rate or cover rate when he put this together. And you know, I am a Galassi fan. I'm down with Masters of Kung Fu, no doubt. But I'm also like the first one to say that dude will cash a check every now and again, man. There's a lot of Dark Horse work that I'm not feeling, and he will take a job, you know. And this is a job, and also, I mean, just in terms of composition, your character is instantly not flying the second the tip of the toes touch a panel border, and the same goes for the damn bottom of the foot on the bottom of the cover. I'm not that much of a stickler when it comes to tangents and stuff like that, but with a flying character, he just ain't flying if we can't see that he's in the fucking air.
Yes, excellent point. Yeah.
I'm a huge Galassi fan. He's one of my primary influences, especially earlier on when I was first starting to make comics. And yeah, this is a cover I'm familiar with for years and never really dug. And I like when Galassi gets weird and distorted, and that's part of the reason why I like him. But this one, the perspective. I'm not even a stickler for like perspective on things, but this one, the perspective just doesn't feel. He's not selling it like he usually does. That left arm and that left leg are a problem, and even just conceptually, I'm surprised that he got this sketch through, because it gives away a little bit too much of the story to me right off the bat. Like, I think that gives away the end a little bit too much of the.
Tom, your thoughts on the Galassi cover?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a problem with it. I haven't given these covers any thought whatsoever until we did this show. Then, like, I've kind of been like seeing things and noticing things, and this cover looked fine to me. You know, I'm into it. You know, like none of those things you mentioned, you know, bother me. I'm not a big tangent guy, and also like when you're talking about a cover, sometimes in-house they kind of decide how they want to crop it. Maybe the figures were like a little smaller in the original composition. They cropped it close and ended up creating that tangent. So, I mean, I don't know. My only thought is Gargunza looks like Uncle Sam in this picture. I don't know if maybe that was the. I know Galassi relies a lot on reference sometimes, and I don't know if he was using reference of like an Uncle Sam poster or something. But that's my only thought.
Yeah, I could see that. And Tom, like you said, I'm assuming the tangent problem with this cover happened in-house after Galassi sent the artwork in, and someone wasn't even paying attention to this, and they just kind of cut and pasted the logo at the top, and there was plenty of space that he had top, and he probably drew enough of the earth at the bottom where he knew where the full bleeds would go, but this was an in-house design mistake, basically.
When Jim and I did the Comics Journal issue with the Todd McFarlane interview, there was also a David Mazzucchelli interview in there, and Mazzucchelli said something that sort of stuck with me my entire life, and certainly my entire professional career. He said that whatever you do when you're working for like the big two, you have to do everything you can to be the last pair of hands to touch the piece before it goes to the printer, man, to prevent this kind of bullshit. You know what I'm saying, man? I can't imagine anything more heartbreaking. Now, this is just a cover. It's a quick deal. He might have done it in a day or two. But your book can be fucked. You know what I mean? Like, I had to do some signings in San Diego, sitting next to a dude who was complaining all day that like, his book was supposed to be in color, and the shit was printed in black and white, and he didn't even know it. You know what I'm saying, man? So it's like, you have to do everything you can to get as much control of that final piece, man, because it's Galassi that's
right. His name's on there, not
signed right here.
Whoever.
Yeah, Joey Jerkoff in the fucking pay stubs department. Let's launch into things, man. So, you know, I'll give my mea culpas and shit to Chuck Beckham's artwork, but there are still a couple of bits where it's kind of weak. And what I identified looking at it this time, and just seeing how it's become a little bit more polished and a little bit more interesting compositions. We were talking before we went live with the episode about how there are some cartoonists who, you know, when you're rating the quarter bins, the least interesting stuff would be like those Eternity comics that are like almost professional looking, like the comics that almost can hit the marks for the DC house style or the Marvel house style. And that's what some of this Chuck Beckham stuff reminds me of. Now, he's credited as artist, so that means he's doing the ink job. And, you know, these guys, they think slickness is, like, the mark of good inking. And it's like, he's got an organic style that's fucked up, and it doesn't abide by correct anatomy or anything like that. If he had a more organic ink style, all of those, any problems I have with the work, would be abolished, man, because his what I'm seeing is an incongruency, man. It's like he's better with a brush than he is with the pencil, but when you have that kind of like sharp inking over top of bad foundation, it's just kind of boring looking.
Yeah, I mean, this can apply to almost any art from this era, but I think if you put this on newsprint, most of the problems go away.
You could be right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Could you guys imagine if like Sienkiewicz or Ted McKeever inked this stuff? It would be so much more exciting and amplified, you know?
Yeah. That said, so much of it I do like when Miracleman shows up on the scene, it's outlaw comics to me.
Yeah. It is. Yeah, and he's just like psychotic. He has the glazed look in his eyes. You know, it reminds me of like Stardust the Super Wizard, how he's just like meting out these like these like Hammurabi's code kind of like punishments. You know, just really great. Very inspiring to like I can see how it has influenced me as a creator.
Yeah, you know, I just looking through this again. One of the things I like about the artwork, I like generic artwork, and this stuff cries generic to me.
Yes.
And for some reason, I equate Alan Moore's best work with artwork that sort of steps back from trying to compete with the story he's trying to tell. And for some reason, I feel like generic work with Alan Moore's writing is very successful. Like it really helps his story just told without trying to like stand in the way of it or anything like that. So I actually think that this work, yeah, it's a little bit, it's not as like refined or accomplished as like some other more like better generic artists. Like I think Dave Gibbons is a really good example of a really good generic artist who's just who has a great style but it's very simple and direct and straightforward. And it's very much a signature style, but he's not like, you know, trying to overpower the narrative in any way. He's just trying to like tell the story.
Well, Alan Moore had those like Superman stories, the Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow, that were like drawn by Kurt Swan and Murphy Anderson, and I feel like those guys would probably be like the ideal Alan Moore collaborators, like forever, you know.
Exactly. And I was actually just looking at that stuff today, and I love George Perez's
That's right, yeah.
Over Kurt Swan, and I was like looking at it, and I was just like, this is really fantastic, almost perfect artwork for comic books.
Not to get too off topic, but what if we do those 2 issues next week, man?
Sure,
the Superman ones.
Let's do it.
Oh yeah,
yeah, that's one of my favorites. It's a good companion piece to Miracleman, I think.
But to the task at hand,
Right.
Miracleman number 7.
Yeah.
The general story is that Mike Moran, he's stuck in his human form for about an hour, which should be just enough time for that miracle dog to fuck him up.
They can't trick him into saying his code word.
Right. And I'm pretty sure chatting with 3 at least college students, probably college grads. What is Steppenwolf?
Steppenwolf. I don't know. I mean, I know he's a villain from Jack Kirby's Fourth World. The Wolf of the Steppes. I don't know.
It's a Herman Hesse novel, which is why he's going through like the Herman Hesse, like Siddhartha. But I've never read it, so I couldn't tell you what it's about.
Well, there's like a reference. There's like a lot of like sort of biblical references. Like he talks about the nativity, of this baby and stuff. And then like when those sort of like German like war criminals are trying to hunt down, try to find the corpse of Miracleman, they're talking about, like, the one guy says, it's such a shame, he was the Ubermensch, he was this, beautiful thing that we've been waiting for. We waited for him 40 years, and then we killed him. And then the other guy's like, oh, that's always the way, Heinz. I swear that's like from like a Herman Hesse novel, or like a some like Brothers Karamazov, some Russian literature. Like one of the stories within a story was one where Jesus comes back and he's like immediately like murdered or whatever.
This dude is having like exotic Aryan fantasies about on this page.
Yeah, like the Ubermensch is realized. Everything that Hitler promised him is finally here.
And the idea of the Ubermensch, like in Nietzsche, and like Jack Kirby explored this too, is that the Ubermensch would like immediately find us, unworthy, and would just cut our heads off, or we like clear the decks, kind of like we would be wiped out. So like all these guys who are there to like sort of worship the Superman and who created the Superman, he's got no time for them, and that's like exactly what happens here.
Yeah, for sure. Last time we saw Miracleman engaged in any kind of super heroic fisticuffs, it was with basically another god. It was Miracleman versus Kid Miracleman. But now the Ubermensch is upon us, and at the end, Dr. Gargunza is going to get it.
You mentioned like that fight, and it's almost like when he won the fight with Johnny Bates, it was accidental. Like he did, like Johnny Bates slipped up. He didn't do anything to him. Like he didn't come up with this plan and trick Johnny. It just happened. He was lucky. So it's kind of like, okay, we had the fight where he was lucky. Now it's time for him to prove his mettle and put on his thinking cap. And now he's like, Theseus in the labyrinth, or what? Like he's like that character who has to like earn his success now. Like luck can only last you so long. So he starts doing that thinking.
Good design on the Miracle Dog, by way of good old Chuck Austin, man. That's not an easy thing to do. I often talk about, like, whenever we're in public talks and stuff, man. What kind of gift and curse would it be if you were like an enterprising young penciler, and you get the call from Marvel that you now have a gig, but now you have to draw like Devil Dinosaur or like something where it's like you spent your whole life just trying to figure out how to draw a person. And now you got to draw these like dinosaurs and shit, you know what I mean? Like and by the way, and you have to do that monthly. You know, so
right, yeah. Creatures and animals of any sort are a whole different. That's a whole different set of drawing skills going on. Some artists are incredibly gifted and talented at that, and some are, I guess, like myself, are more rooted in just like the human form. Like that's just my thing, you know.
Yeah, and Chuck is pretty convincing with this Miracle Dog, man.
Yeah, Uber Hunt.
And of course, when he changes them back, we have to have the epically Alan Moore panel sequence where Miracle Dog turns into a little puppy that then is destroyed with a rock.
Yeah. Yeah, same as like the Johnny Bates thing that happens at the end. It's like Miracle Man can't like kill somebody like really hateful. He can't just like, you know, punch a monster in the face and rip a monster's head off. It has to come down to him, you know, murdering a puppy, killing a boy, you know, like it doesn't have any poignancy otherwise if he's just like punching like some troll in the face.
Is this whole entire conversation just foreplay before we get to that splash page with Miracle Man busting heads?
Completely. And I mean, look at this. This is just red and white, and they didn't even bother to color the wish I wish tonight title logo of the issue a different color than red. It's just like just all red and white, and you know, there you go. And the explosion of the heads, it's got some yellow in it, but I love the ridiculous graphic nature of this. It's fantastic.
Yeah, it's really effective. You know, it's hard not to look at Miracle Man and just think that this is sort of like an Alan Moore take on Superman in a way, and what would Superman be like if he was, you know, really in and how he would behave, you know, and with these kind of powers, or maybe how a real person might behave if they were granted like these kind of human abilities. And if you were really pissed, maybe you would just crush two people's heads against one another like this.
Yeah, he's kind of like feeling his oats here, because even like the Warrior magazine stuff was not this graphic. This is like a guy who has now spent a bunch of time at DC and pushing the boundaries there pretty far, but kind of, you know, probably, you know, feeling, you know, the limitations there. And now it's like, oh, this is an independent comic. This is a comic that doesn't have the comics code. I'm going for it. And like you said, it creates an outlaw comic. There's like an eyeball popping out. Like you wouldn't see somebody's eyeball popping out in an issue of Superman, or even, you know, Wolverine. Right. You wouldn't see that.
Right. A dog is brutally murdered.
A cute dog. The dog is really cute. It's this fluffy little, like, you know, internet kind of video kind of puppy. And you have, like, sort of the nursery rhyme. Like, this is I think of, like, Cockney Gangsters or something, where, like, he's saying a nursery. He's like, you know, starlight, star bright, first star I see it as he's, like, you know, smashing people's heads and, like, throwing people into space. Like, I kind of, like, copied some of this for Satan Soldier, where he's like, Mama had a baby and the head popped off, and then he'd like stick his thumb in like a guy's mouth and then flick his thumb up, and then the head would go flying off like you would do with like a flower or something. Like it's like that kind of like really like frightening bullying where somebody just starts saying like nonsensical kids stuff to you. It's a little bit like Dice Clay's like Hickory Dickory Dock.
So two of those Nazi guys dispatched. And we have the guy who was kind of fetishizing the Ubermensch the most is the guy that's left last man standing, gets to have a couple of words with Miracle Man. You finally come. And then that's when, let's keep the atrocities up. Miracle Man's like, yo, you could go now, man. And just gives him that 1-inch punch, that 1-inch Bruce Lee punch, like through his body.
Yeah, just kind of like sticks his finger, like just kind of almost like in slow motion, just kind of sticks his finger into his chest. And the guy's just like looking as like this hand goes right through him, like he's not there. And like he's talking like I think it's a little bit after this, he's talking about like, you know, this like paper world that they inhabit, like that, like, oh yeah, this guy is like made out of steel, and everything around him, every tree, every door, every building is almost like, if he leaned on it, it would tear apart. It's like he's at like a movie set, and like everything's made out of balsa wood.
And which leads to that super memorable page, man. The one where it's first person view, and Homeboy's just flying through every sort of obstacle in order to get to the final destination. Flies through a tree, flies through rocks, and just keeps it rocking, man. In the, what was it, maybe 50 years, 45 years of Superman comics in existence up to this point, we never got to see that view. You know what I'm saying? Like,
right. Good point. Yeah, he refers to like the world around him as just paper. Like that's like, Tom, your point of the balsa wood and all that. He literally just says like, this world is paper. I can just do what I want and tear through everything.
I feel like the precedent for this is that there's like this Larry Niven essay called like Men of Steel, Women of Kleenex or something, and it's about exactly, and it talks about like the tissue paper world and tissue paper people, and that and like an ordinary human being must seem like almost not even a human to like a sort of super. They just seem like these sort of like paper ghosts that you kind of see through, like you just see these like paper skeletons and things that are super delicate. Like you're in like a kite shop or something, and that's what you're surrounded with. So like it would tend to make this super being not view these people with like the sort of dignity and humanity that they deserve.
Visually, the storytelling of this page is very similar to there's a Superman sequence in Dark Knight Returns that we mentioned in our previous coverage, man, where it's like that first person view.
Yeah,
that came out around this time too, man. So,
and it was another thing, like you said, where all those years of Superman comics, how come we've never seen this before? It's super simple, super effective, and just it never occurred to Kurt Swan or whoever,
And Chuck Austin, like on this page, shows improves on the direct next page when we get to see outside of the first person view and we see him flying through a guy. A little less effective to me, man. It's a little bit stiff.
I agree. I was gonna bring that up too, man. But I was like, man, that panel a little anticlimactic compared to the page before, and I immediately had this thought when I was reading this, like, what would this panel look like if Jeff Darrow drew it? Like, could you imagine this hero with like entrails in every deep vessel, like exploding around him, bones and fragments and stuff? But it just made me think of something out of like Hard Boiled or something.
When like staring at the image, I was trying to think about like what's wrong about it, like what is making it look just so kind of like anti-dynamic or whatever. And I think one of the things he could have done would have been to have put like a lot of distance between Miracleman and those body parts. You know what I'm saying? Like if those body parts are far behind him, then that sells the motion, because I think that's what I'm feeling here. It's like a lack of motion.
I think
but it also looks like the body parts it looks like he's just going through like a set of blocks. Right. Like it doesn't look like he's going through flesh at all. It just looks like he's going through pieces that are interchangeable, not necessarily like connected by flesh and blood and tendons and guts or anything.
For
like
me,
that.
The ineptness adds to like the pornography of it. That it like seems extra obscene because it's badly drawn. Like it does seem like like a snuff film or something. And it like something that's happened between the Warrior magazine issues and now, like, and the time of this comic, is that whole like slasher movie revolution. Has like slasher movies are like mainstream by this, but like we're up to like Friday the 13th Part 4 maybe by this point and stuff. So like these like a human being viewed as just these like this like meat, these body parts.
Yeah, I think when Rambo First Blood, the novel came out, that the term carnography was coined.
Yeah.
Wow.
Recommend that book. Can't recommend that book highly enough, actually. But ultimately, flies through that last guy, and even with like style and grace, he does that kind of like half gainer with a twist to
the triple Lundy.
Yeah.
Yeah, these are fantastically well drawn panels. You know.
Yeah.
But finally, man, this Gargunza guy who was the bane of Miracleman's existence up to this point, man, it's kind of a shook Peckerwood, man. Dispatches him pretty easy because now the god has his hands on just like a regular human being, however repulsive he may be.
Yeah, he's about to say the magic word, and it's like, well, you know, you're not going to fool me twice with this. So he, like, as he's saying, about to say Abraxas, he says ab, and then he puts his hand over his throat, and like, there you go. I don't know what else you have up your sleeve, Gargunza, but yeah.
And it's so great too because the second he grabs him by that throat, 100% impotence, just a nothing of a human being, man. It's the same facial expression the whole time, and
Yeah, he might even be dead. Like, he might even be dead all this time that he's like sort of talking to him and saying, "Oh, here's the Earth." He might be dead. You know?
I mean, there's, and this could have something to do with just Chuck Austin's command of human anatomy, but that character is very, very stiff throughout the rest of the story, man. So you know, you could be onto something.
And there's this like he's going for this visual contrast was probably part of Moore's plan the whole time, that like Miracleman is like 12 feet tall, lean and long, and then Gargunza is like, looks very, very small, like when they're both in the shot together, just sort of these extreme opposites.
And dispatches with the supervillain, man. This might be one of the best supervillain deaths I can recall.
Right. There's so many.
It's very satisfying.
I was just gonna say, there's so many like sadistically satisfying moments in this issue where it just all wraps up, basically.
Yeah, and he gives him the kiss, and that's like that's a very interesting choice, very interesting moment. Like as an Italian American, I'm very familiar with sort of the kiss of death, where like you kiss somebody who like it's basically an FU,
Well, he's also referring to Gargunza as his father, as this father figure, and it's almost like a family kind of thing. Like, I'm kissing my dad goodbye, see ya, as I plummet you through the cosmos and you burn up upon re-entry.
Yeah, and I think again this is like another instance where like some of the awkwardness of the drawing makes it like more disturbing. Like that long tall panel where he's going down, it's like so bad. But it like makes it kind of freaky. Like you're looking at something you're not supposed to be seeing. This is like not prime time stuff. And then on the next page, when he starts to kind of like burn up, he kind of converts into this mass of like, I don't know, dog food,
like a turd.
A turd or something. Yeah, like a sloppy Joe or something.
Yeah, he's literally a piece of shit.
Yeah. And then it's like you could imagine, like the obvious choice would be that all that's left is like his skull. His skull bounces and he picks up his skull and talks to his skull or whatever. But it's like his pelvis. It's like even more dehumanizing. It's like
it's really strange.
Tom, you're super right on. Like the awkwardness makes it more jarring and disturbing. And I always think in terms of like, what would it look like if so-and-so drew it, or such and such style was doing this same storytelling. But yeah, the wonkiness makes it otherworldly and more demented in a way.
Yeah, craft is very comforting.
Right.
Because it feels professional. Like craft is professionalism.
Yeah, you're in
it's
a
like,
safe.
You picture the guy from that like Daniel Clowes Modern Cartoonist thing with his like little visor and his smock on, like at the drawing table. But this art is like art therapy in an insane asylum.
Yeah, this guy
art.
Might have somebody in his face while he's drawing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally, man. Any final words on issue 7 of Miracleman?
I feel like this. Like if this were the end of the series, this would be a fine ending. Like this would be a good point to end. Like you've kind of said the thing you want to say.
Yeah, but we are basically a little less than half finished with the Alan Moore run of Miracleman.
I was just gonna say, it definitely feels like a turning point, like in the series, just because we've read more than just this issue, but at this point, it definitely feels like things are shifting. Like things are concluding in one sense and then beginning in another.
Yeah, well said, man. And the kayfabe community is going to figure out how things progress if they haven't checked these comics out themselves yet, because we're going to have another episode this this coming week, man, where we're going to talk about Miracleman number 9, because number 8 was just kind of like a reprint of some old material with like a little bridge sequence.
Yeah, little framing sequence.
Yeah. Anyhow, man, let's get the heck out of here. Before we do that, give some plugs to the audience. Let them know where they could find you guys, man. Tom, why don't you go first?
Okay, Fantastic Four Grand Design is going to be the Treasury Edition is going to be out January 29th.
So that means it's out now.
Okay. Oh no, January 29th. Oh yeah, whenever this video. Okay, cool. I got lost in the kayfabe.
Yeah.
And follow me on Twitter at Tom Sholey, one word, or on Instagram at Tom_Sholey.
Mahfood.
Yes, Instagram and Twitter. And if I can show this cover real quick, we're launching a Kickstarter at the end of January for my pop-up funk book. It's an actual pop-up book with a bunch of my art, some new comics inside. And you guys can just Google Pop-Up Funk Kickstarter, and if you want to support the campaign, that would be much appreciated.
Yo, did you have to engineer the pop-up part of it, or did some scientist handle that bit?
Rostin Meyer is a friend of mine, and he designs my website, and he makes pop-up books. You can find him on Instagram, Popposition Press, and he's made books with Skinner, Junko Mizuno. I was in one of his books that he did, but he is a brilliant designer, man, and he just figured out how to engineer these pop-ups, and we actually get all the guts and everything made overseas now, but he figured out how to do all this stuff. It's pretty incredible.
Ben Mara, hit us with some plugs.
Find my stuff on benjaminmara.com, Benjamin_Mara at Instagram, _BenjaminMara_ for Twitter. And you can find my stuff on Amazon or Fantagraphics websites or cool comic book stores.
Very cool. And I want to encourage you guys to add your names to the Kayfabe newsletter. All the links to all this stuff are directly below the video. We're going to get the heck out of here, but I encourage you guys to read more comics, Moore.